China's carbon emissions just dropped for the first time, and not because of an economic slowdown, but because renewables are finally outpacing fossil fuels. Do you think this could be a turning point for the planet?
Today's date is 2025-05-21. For years, whenever China's emissions fell, it usually meant economic trouble, or maybe COVID restrictions, right? But this time, we're seeing a 1.6% year-on-year decrease in the first quarter of 2025, and the economy is still expanding.
That's exactly it. The big difference is that this isn't about factories shutting down or a short-term dip. It's a result of a record surge in clean energy. Wind, solar, and nuclear are expanding so quickly that they've already outpaced electricity demand. Just in the power sector, emissions dropped 2% over the last year.
Let's get specific. In 2024, China added 429 gigawatts of new power capacity. That's a 21% increase from the year before, and 86% of that was renewables. Solar alone made up 65% of the total.
To put that in perspective, solar generation rose by 48% in the first quarter of 2025, reaching 254 terawatt-hours. That's now 10% of all electricity in China. Wind's even bigger, 13% of the total. Altogether, clean sources make up 39% of China's electricity now, compared to 34% a year ago.
Why is this important globally? Earlier forecasts said China's emissions would peak before 2025, then slowly decline. But now, some analysts think the actual peak might have been in 2023. If this drop keeps going, does it improve our chances of meeting the Paris Agreement targets?
That's really the key question. If China keeps up this pace, or even speeds it up, emissions could fall by 1% each year, not just 0.5%. That's 750 million tons less CO2 by 2030. But
there's still a risk, right? Emissions are only 1% below their peak, so a short-term spike could change the trend.
exactly. And China isn't in the clear yet. Coal remains a big part of the mix. Plus, last summer's floods in provinces like Guangdong, Henan, and Hunan were a clear reminder that climate impacts are already being felt. But I think the real challenge during this surge in clean energy was
the grid, right? Connecting all this new power meant they invested about $84.7 billion in grid upgrades and transmission in 2024 alone. That brought national transmission losses down to 4.37%. They also ramped up battery storage to deal with renewables' ups and downs.
So they solved grid and storage bottlenecks. But balancing jobs in coal and using existing infrastructure must have been another issue, right?
Policy stability really mattered. China kept local governments, businesses, and even international partners involved. That helped keep the transition on track and projects moving forward.
Looking at coal versus renewables, thermal power still made up 13% of new capacity in 2024. But that's a 7% drop from the previous year. At the same time, zero-emission sources accounted for 87% of new capacity. So coal isn't disappearing overnight, but the trend is clear.
It's a managed transition. Some coal stays on for energy security, but renewables are scaling up faster than ever. If this keeps up, power sector emissions should keep dropping through 2025 and possibly beyond, depending on the next 5-year plan.
So what about other major emitters, like India or the US? What's the main lesson from China's approach? I'd say policy stability stands out. China's consistent approach gave investors and developers confidence, which hasn't always been the case in Western countries.
Infrastructure investment is another big takeaway. China's grid modernization allowed renewables to expand quickly without running into major bottlenecks. And involving local communities meant projects moved faster, something the US and Europe often struggle with.
And the economic side is worth noting. China's clean energy sector now employs 7.4 million people. That's nearly half of all global clean energy jobs. They're showing that cutting emissions can go hand in hand with economic growth.
So the big takeaway, China's emissions are finally falling, not because of a slowdown, but because clean energy is taking the lead. The road ahead won't be without bumps, but this sends a strong message globally. If the largest emitter can shift course, who's next?
That's the story. China's emissions down, renewables up, and the global climate math is changing. Thanks for joining us as we unpack the numbers and lessons.
Thanks for listening. This episode was brought to you by mynews.studio. You can try it now for free.